Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us for today's session, Leveraging Creativity to Drive Change in Uncertain Times. I'm Lacey Jungman, Vice President of Sales and Marketing at Heritage Communities, and I'm joined with Amy Burkle, Chief Operating Officer at Heritage Communities. And today we're going to talk a little bit about how to take a culture of creativity to ignite change within your organization. As I mentioned, this is the two of us, so we can slide through this slide here, but Amy, Chief Operating Officer, and I work in overseeing the sales and marketing efforts of our organization. Or as some of you may know, in Arizona, we are known also as Orchard Point Communities. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about why creativity matters, what is creativity. There are no bad brainstorms, right? It's kind of that whole cliche of there are no bad brainstorms has been adopted by Heritage Communities. And we're going to talk a little bit about some of the brainstorms that started off not so hot that turned into real successful ventures. So we're going to talk through that, creating a culture of creativity that prompts positive change and lessons that we've learned the hard way of how to create that culture of creativity so that hopefully we can save you from making some of those missteps as well. And creative approaches to driving change, real life examples affecting positive outcomes. And as we all know, we're in the face of a significant change in our industry and in our world. COVID-19 has impacted us substantially. And so we're going to talk through how has this culture of creativity allowed for new innovations, new ideas in the face of COVID-19. So with that, we'll go ahead and get started with what is creativity and why does it matter? If you think of creativity as really these connecting of two dots, creativity is the ability to see relationships where none exist or none were ever have thought to have existed before. Creativity is linking two different ideas together into a pattern to make connections between the dots that there were maybe no obvious ties before, however, can generate real life solutions and propel an organization into the next stage. Why it matters though? Boy, it matters a whole heck of a lot because as those organizations who instill a culture of creativity are open to change, to learning, to growing, we see organizations that propel in the face of challenges and those who stay stagnant. And so for us as an industry, as we've been faced with, the most challenging times of our entire industry, a culture of creativity allows us to be nimble, to pivot, to flex, and to do things that we may have never done before and see successful outcomes out of that. And so as we think of ourselves as an organization at the community level, at the home office level, regional support, all of those areas, culture of creativity, that is so important so that we don't stay stagnant, so we can move and bend with the times, and ultimately our residents benefit from that. And at no greater time, of course, has this creativity been as needed as it is right now. So we're going to move next into my favorite saying or tagline, which is an unwritten tagline at Heritage Communities. It is no bad brainstorms. That's my favorite line here. Whenever we come to the office, we get together, we're faced with a challenge or a hiccup, an obstacle in the road. We always get together and we throw things on the wall to see what sticks. And what we've learned over time is that we really have to all have the same mindset that there is no bad brainstorms. If you're not familiar with Brené Brown, I encourage you to pick up your pen and a piece of paper and write this down. Brené Brown, B-R-E-N-E, Brown. She is one of my all-time favorite lecturers, authors. She's a professor at the University of Houston. She's written a couple great books for leadership, Daring Greatly and Dare to Lead. In those books, she talks about the role of vulnerability in creativity. And it seems a little odd, perhaps, if you haven't read those books or are unfamiliar with Brené Brown, to be talking about vulnerability in the place of the workplace, right? In the setting where we're trying to find solutions and generate outcomes. But really, she states that vulnerability is the birthplace for creativity, innovation, and change. And what we need at times, and often right now in the face of COVID, is some change. We need creativity and innovation, but that can't happen without a sense of vulnerability. Because vulnerability, as Brene states, is really the uncertainty, the risk, and the emotional exposure that somebody experiences when they step out of their comfort zone to perhaps give an idea or share a new concept with a group of peers. Whether you're sitting next to your peers or with your supervisors, there is a little bit of vulnerability on the part of the person who has an idea to express it and to share it. And so to really create that culture of creativity requires us to all have this notion of no bad brainstorms. We think of the improv comedy, how there's always the back and forth between two different people where there's no scripting and they're constantly trying to come up with new avenues for entertainment. Well, their first rule in improv comedy is yes, agreeing with the idea that's stated in front of them. Their second rule is yes, and capitalizing on top of that idea. So when there's vulnerability and somebody expresses their idea and we receive it well, we talk about how do we capitalize on that? It may not be the best idea to begin with, but that yes and notion, that concept may propel us into where we need to be with that idea. It may start as a little flicker or a flame, but cause real ignition and motivation in its pathway. So that's what we talk about is no bad brainstorms. It's really neat to see when we get together as an organization and we talk through different ideas, how somebody might throw out a really off the wall idea. And everybody else is like, oh, I don't think that's not, that we can't do that. And somebody chimes in and says, well, there's no bad brainstorms because that person was vulnerable in front of an entire group and we want them to contribute constantly. So creating that feeling of expression and being able to share something without fear of an emotional exposure is the foundation for creating this culture of creativity. And so, the other piece of that, I will say that we've worked really hard and some of our core values are rooted in this vulnerability piece is honesty, openness, respect, and trust. We have to have trust and respect when we're sharing new ideas. And that's also a contributor to the piece of vulnerability that attaches itself to creativity. So as you think about your own organization, your community, your organization, or how you support some of the communities, it's really important to think back to what is the emotional exposure that somebody might have when they want to share an idea, and how do I receive that? Am I quick to go no? Or am I quick to say, how can we make it happen? You know, the owner of our company has been known for saying, don't be a can't person, be a can, or let's figure out how we can do something. And that is a good differentiator of how we stay in this mindset of creating a culture of creativity. So I challenge you and encourage you to think about those pieces as well as you're setting the tone for your own culture of creativity. Now we're going to talk a little bit about some of our sparks that started off as, we might say maybe not a hot brainstorm. We won't say it's a bad brainstorm. We'll just say it wasn't received quite as well from the beginning. Back a handful of years ago, we went through a rebrand of our organization. So Heritage Communities is the parent company for Orchard Point Communities in Arizona. And we had a big feat on our hands. We were rebranding the entire organization. And one of the pieces of that rebrand was how we wrapped our vehicles, what they should look like. And the message that we worked with our advertising agency was that we wanted it to stand out. We wanted our vehicle, our bus, or our van to be wrapped in a sense that it stood out, it attracted folks it attracted other drivers' eyes, not in a dangerous way, but that they would look at our vehicles and say, I wonder what that is. That's pretty cool. And so with that thought, our advertising agency came up with this. The cat's meow. This is what our agency called this back in 2014. This was their pitch to us of how we could wrap our entire vehicle fleet throughout the organization, that it's almost like a luggage, an old leather luggage tote that somebody might carry when they traveled back years ago, where they posted stickers on the side of their leather tote. So it kind of showed everywhere that they went. And to them, this was the spark of an idea that they had hoped would be a ripple effect within the organization. And we all kind of looked at each other like, this may not be the cat's meow. This may not be right for us. But what I do recall out of that conversation and the subsequent conversations from that is I specifically remember looking at these stickers on the vehicle and saying, well, in addition to not really loving all of these stickers, I also didn't want to block the view of the residents. So as they're sitting there, you see that big red circle or oval that says assisted living and memory care. I was worried that that might interfere with the residents seeing out. And what I had learned, because vehicle wrapping was new to me then, what I had learned was there was a way to put that sticker on there so it would not impede the residents' view. They could still see out. It was this mesh type of look, but that it still looked as a whole picture from the outside. So that idea sparked where we ended up, which was this design. As you can see here, very different from where we started, but without the idea, without learning from that initial idea of we could block part of the window without impeding the view, you can see that we actually designed the tree over the back end of that window there. I don't know that we would have done that before if we didn't have that first idea and talk through some of the challenges. So even though the first one didn't work, it still played a role into our final outcome. Again, not knowing that we could cover up that window. I mean, it seems very simple, but that was a good lesson for us to know, okay, well, that gives us some more flexibility, and what can we learn from this experience to make this next wrap even better. From there, I will share with you, actually, I'm gonna wait to show you this picture real quickly. I'm gonna tell you the backstory of this. We had a community where a maintenance director was really involved in trying to figure out ways that he could save money, cost savings, right? We all want that for our communities. And he had paid for somebody to stripe his parking lot, but he also wanted to contribute because he had done previously in his previous life some of the signage. So the handicap signage, the no parking signage that might be spray painted onto the asphalt when they restripe their parking lot. So we allow that, you know, creativity. We love a little bit of creativity. That's something that worked for him in the past. And so when I had gone to visit, I was greeted with this no parking sign. So nope, parking. I got a good chuckle out of it when I pulled up. I did not park there because I knew what it meant. But as I walked by, I couldn't help but take a picture of this. And this was a handful of years ago as well. But it's one of my favorite examples of empowerment, right? This maintenance director, it was important to him that he could help contribute to the cost savings of the organization. He could do this without having to pay somebody else. And while it may not have worked out just like we planned, there was a lesson in this for him too. I can tell you the next time I went after they striped and he did his spray painting, there was no more parking at their community. It did say no parking or loading zone only. So while this may not have turned out ideal for this very first time, it was a lesson learned, creativity that sparked a change, and now they have a really good flow and a system that worked for them at their community. And that maintenance director is still with us. Mistakes happen, right? That's part of creativity, is we throw things on the wall and see what sticks. Nope, parking does not stick, but it does stick when it says no parking. And so now we've seen a change there, and ultimately what that was left with was an associate that felt empowered because they were listened to and they were able to use their own creativity for years on end after that. Our next piece that I wanted to share with you is Heritage OnCare. So Heritage OnCare is actually our home health entity that we established back in 2017 that services our Midwest communities in Nebraska. So our home health care company, we didn't have a name for quite some time. I would say before we even rolled out, probably within this first 6 months, we didn't have a name for this home health care company as we were starting to formulate the processes and the systems for it. And so we thought, well, let's get the executive leadership team into a meeting, right? And let's talk through all the different things. Let's have a big brainstorm. There were probably about 6 or 7 of us in the room. And we started throwing things on these white sticky notes on the wall. And we started, what's important to us? And we were facilitating conversations, making up words, right? Like merging 2 words together to create our own word. And talking through a variety of different options that, you know, what do we want to be known for? What services do we provide? And so we started maybe around, I don't know, 2 or 3 in the afternoon. And I remember Amy saying at one point around 6, we're staying here until we get a name for this thing as late as it takes. Well, we did not end up with a name that night. It's kind of like how I threaten my kids and actually don't follow through on that. So we still left there around 7 or 8. I can't remember what time that was. We still had no name after a handful of hours of brainstorming. And I will tell you, we had one member of the leadership team that had their own proposal. After all of this was said and done, it sparked something inside of their brain that they got thinking more outside of the box in their own way. So after this meeting, this individual had put together a proposal for what we could be called. And they called it Red Care. So Red Care, as you can see here, you see ready, R-E, ready to connect with you and provide the professional care you need. Relationship building, we talk a lot about relationship building in our industry. R-E, relationship building. You can see a theme here, hopefully. Red is the color of Nebraska, which is where we're rooted and reflects our heritage. Red Care also, I remember us thinking, also reminds us of the Red Cross, reminds us of blood, reminds us financially of being in the red. So there were a lot of things that when you look at this, or when we looked at this initially, we're like, oh, there's no bad brainstorms. There's no bad brainstorms in this. But wait, there's more. There was more thought put into this concept. So thinking along the lines of yes, and we'll show you yes, and more conversation that was had from this individual. They felt that red is love and a lifesaver, a life preserver out there. You can see here, this gentleman on your right-hand side is ready to work for us. And that was a campaign that we could have done. Ready. I loved all of the thought that went into this. And so if we were to have stopped right there and said no, think about how this individual would have felt if we just crushed their spirit, right? They were vulnerable. They took time to really put this proposal together, and they showed great vulnerability. And so in the mindset and the culture of creativity that states no bad brainstorms, we took this idea and lobbed it over to an agency that was a little bit more creative than we were feeling at the time. And then they put their heads together and started brainstorming even more, which is why we ended up, I'm gonna go back up actually, to Heritage On Care. So Red Care might not have been right, but we landed on Care. We're always on. And so you can see how that first time when we got together brainstorming, all of us in the room, sparked an idea in somebody's head. Red Care. Red Care wasn't right for us at the time, but it did then trickle and have a ripple effect into our name, which is Heritage On Care. So you see how this transition and momentum is built, and we'll keep going forward. But I'll tell you what, there were huge lessons that we learned. And the first lesson that we learned when it comes to a culture of creativity is that not everybody has to have a seat at the table for the brainstorming part. There's a few different pieces and players that have to be a part of a culture of creativity. The first one is those brainstormers, those people who ping pong ideas off of other people, who connect the dots, right? Who are looking for correlations between 2 different places. The what ifs, what if we did this? What if we did that? And so once there's a brainstorm solution or an idea put together, then it transitions to the next set of people, the processes and the systems, because those people are critically important to making the idea a success. Without processes and systems, we wouldn't be here today. And so they have to be creative too and think, rather than, no, this won't work, how can we build a process around this or a system so that it does work? And then from there, we have our executors, those people that go out and implement the new ideas that now have processes and systems and are now executing it. So what we learned is there's a set of people that are naturally wired to do brainstorming. In our organization, we call them the oranges. So you can see here, we had a time where we welcomed oranges into our home office for a little bit of brainstorming, a challenge that was presented to one of our communities. We brought in some of their bright thinkers, and that included dietary associates, it included CNAs and CMAs, it included a driver in there and maintenance. It wasn't just the executive leadership team or the leadership team of that building. In fact, some people were not invited or a part of that brainstorm conversation because they needed to be in the processes and the systems piece of it. We brought in those people who were ready to say yes and ping pong ideas off of one another. So that was a hard lesson for us, is not everyone has to be in the room for the first brainstorm session. The second lesson we learned was to remove the fear of brainstorm, remove that barrier, because as quick as we are to say why we can't do something, we have to be even quicker to say why we can and how we can. Not a culture of we can't, but how can we? And again, that falls into the line of no bad brainstorms. And really, I know it's cheesy and cliche, but that has saved our organization from going down the path of no, 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 this won't work, into yes, 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 how could we make this work? And then rooting that in the foundation of trust and respect and openness, and truly listening with the intent to understand the other side rather than listening so that you can get your side across. And the third lesson that we learned was that questions are certainly acceptable, and yet it's still important to understand how to use them in the creativity process. So there's a time when questions work, right? There's a time when we say, well, how will you ever make this work? Well, I don't see how you can connect X, Y, and Z. And that's in the processes and systems. But in the brainstorming session, those questions should be around, well, how can we make it work? What does it look like when X and Y are combined into Z? And asking those questions to propel success in that direction rather than why can't we? And I'll tell you, some of the best ideas come from listening. When residents frequently saw the home office in their communities, there was one individual community that had a lot of questions around the time that our rent increase happened last year. And so these residents asked, where's my money going? I don't understand why we're doing a rate increase, and what does this look like? It's a newer building, so they hadn't experienced much of a rent increase prior to this. And so from listening to them, it was clear that they didn't understand how our organization operated. And that was a miss for us. So we invited that building, along with 6 other buildings in the Omaha Metro, to the home office so they could meet all of our home office team members. They could meet the 2 owners. They could meet Amy, the human resource department, finance. They could understand, how many cups of coffee do we serve at our buildings in any given year? How many applications do we get from frontline staff so that they can help support our residents in their activities of daily living? How much do we spend on advertising so that we can help other residents live better with the notion of getting support throughout their everyday life? And so through those conversations at the home office, we got a lot of feedback from the buildings that said this was really, really eye-opening for us as residents, and we appreciate all you do. And this year, in the midst of COVID, when we did have a slight increase, a rate increase, we did not hear as much of the feedback or gruff as we had heard the year before. So it goes to show that listening really can provide a lot of good ideas. And creativity solving challenges. So back a couple years ago, about 2018, we had a building who was essentially in the middle of a construction project on 2 major roads in the Omaha Metro. So you can see this dotted line on this map here. That dotted line is where the road construction was all shut down. And you see Heritage Point in that big red dot. Our direct access from major streets was shut down during construction. And it was quite the battle there for residents, family members to find us. They had to weave in through a neighborhood to even find our community. And same with prospects. It was difficult for them at first to find us. And so when we had heard about this construction project that was going to happen right in front of our community, we were a little nervous. And so we started talking with the community leadership there at that building. And what we decided to do, since we couldn't fight it, was to join them. And what that led to was our friend, Construction Judy. Construction Judy was a resident named Judy who we fictionalized and put a cartoon character for her as the front, and we put her on social media. Construction Judy was somebody who had the best view in the city as to what was happening with construction. So she would go to the second floor and look over on top of the construction project, take pictures. Well, the community would help her to take pictures and post it to social media. And the whole city got to see an update of construction progress from Construction Judy at our community. We even embraced this so much as having a construction kickoff party with the contractors that were overseeing the construction project of the roads, and invited neighborhood associations into our building so that they could hear directly from the source what was going to happen and how it would impact their neighborhoods as well. It was very well received. In fact, even the construction crew received it very well. This looks like a staged photo, but I'm not kidding you. We would bring those residents down to the construction site, and those folks were so gracious with our residents. I remember they did like a jelly bean contest where they made the contractors take a bite of a green jelly bean, and they had to decide, oh, is this going to be a pear jelly bean or is it going to be vomit jelly bean? And so they would try to trick them with their jelly beans, and they had a good time. And Construction Judy is right there in the center of the screen with her 2 thumbs up. I will tell you, from a morale standpoint, it was a really great booster. And also from an occupancy standpoint, we were able to generate some social media buzz from the local media, and our occupancy did not decline nearly as close to what we had anticipated. And actually, even before construction was over, it accelerated to a place we have not even seen in a long time. So that's exciting, and we're certainly proud of that building as well. So a lot of small ideas that turned into something good and propelled towards success. And now I'm going to pitch it over to Amy, who's going to talk more about creativity and that culture being set from the foundation and how we can spearhead that in a time of challenge like COVID-19.
Thank you, Lacey. You did great. My favorite part was when you showcased with pictures all of our flops. The presentation. That's good.
I hear you.
Definitely cats me out on that. No, but in all seriousness, and while I don't say this very often, Lacey, she's exactly right. Having an environment where creativity is encouraged and visible certainly makes things a lot more fun. It encourages positivity and collaboration and engagement. It definitely is a morale booster. But most importantly, when COVID-19 became a real threat for our communities, it also became our greatest weapon in how to fight this battle and to keep our residents and associates safe. Like all of you, in a short time, COVID-19 became the greatest challenge we had faced in senior living. There's no doubt in my mind that already having leadership teams in place that were practiced at flexibility, being open-minded, being brave, standing up, speaking up, sharing new ideas, and thinking outside the box really helped to keep us laser focused and working together to make change happen for the protection of our associates. In a sense, it helped keep us united. In March, even before COVID-19, we were experiencing it firsthand before we had an exposure into any of our communities, we kicked off our Heritage United mission. The goal was to come together, residents, associates, families, vendors, healthcare partners, and frankly, the communities, counties, and states that we operated in. We wanted to come together to keep our organization safe. Heritage United not only sparked several new initiatives, which I'll share with you today, but it also led to us revamping some current systems and programs we had in place. For example, Surprise and Delight. So Surprise and Delight had been our associate recognition program, similar probably to something that you all have had at your communities. And we've had it for several years. And in that creative spirit, I think each year we worked to make it a little bit bigger and brighter. And the purpose was really acknowledging and showing appreciation to our associates that went way above and beyond for a resident. In turn, they surprised and delighted a resident. And each year we would host a huge event, a full day celebration for these associates, surprising and delighting them for a change. Well, Last summer, I had an opportunity to spend some time in the communities, traveling and spending, actually living in each of the communities as a resident. We called it our 13 first days, as we had 13 communities in full operation at the time. And the purpose of that was for me to just really get a feel for what the resident experience is like. One of my biggest takeaways from that journey was that the residents definitely enjoy those surprise and delight moments. Very important to them, they would talk about them. But what I would hear consistently over and over was it was actually the really small everyday things that the associates did well that really meant the most to them. When staff would ask them about their families and remember their children's names by first name or comment on their pictures in their apartments. When the associates remembered exactly how a resident liked their coffee or how they wanted their bed made or how they would hug them or spend a little bit extra time in the apartment just visiting with them. It really was the everyday moments that helped our residents live better. So thus, in 2019, we transitioned Surprise and Delight into an associate recognition program that celebrated the great and wonderful ways our associates did the little things. So not only were we able to celebrate and recognize even more associates through this process, we were able to go a step further. Using the funds that we spent previous years on this huge big event for our associates, we took that same amount and we put that into an associate give back program, or a care fund. It was a care fund designed for associates that were faced with extreme personal hardship, whether they had a child that was going through medical challenges, whether they had a fire, or actually in the spring of 19, we had quite severe flooding in the Midwest. And so it was a way that we could help our associates live better too. So pre-COVID, our creativity had already helped us expand Surprise and Delight into something bigger. But Heritage United was able to take it to a completely new level for us. During the development of Heritage United, we discussed the potential new threats COVID-19 presented. We were aware our associates would be faced with new challenges, not only at work, but in their personal lives as well. And with no bad brainstorm as our mantra, we took on the challenge of taking this small associate care fund that we had solely funded ourselves and turning it into a separate entity, its own non-for-profit organization, where we could actually raise funds to assist team members facing extreme hardship at the hand of COVID-19. Pushing farther, we created Heritage United t-shirts that were sold with all proceeds going towards the care fund. To date, and still growing, we were able to add over $10,000 in t-shirt sales alone for this care fund. Creativity really was at the core of taking a current program, having it evolve into something with greater influence for the entire organization, truly at a time when we needed it most. This is one of the, on your screen, one of the favorite comments that, my favorite comment that I saw of a family member purchasing 2 t-shirts and commenting on our social media. Residents purchased t-shirts. We had vendors purchase t-shirts. We had partners in the industry across the United States that we do business in that would comment on LinkedIn and, hey, I got my Heritage United t-shirt today, thanks. It really was not only the positivity of what we could add monetarily to the care fund, just a really good morale booster at a time when we were all clinging to something positive and to be a part of something exciting. So not a secret to the group we're speaking with today, as the fear and uncertainty that followed COVID-19 really became a threat for all of us, we were concerned at Heritage. In the early days, we were concerned that associates may not want to stay in their same roles out of fear of COVID-19. From discussions on what to do with that and how to continue to make Heritage United a full program, we were able to add more benefits and programs for our associates. Specifically, we added an associate retention bonus for non-management team members. We added monthly raffle drawings for a bonus for all associates who worked so many shifts in a month. We also made the decision to cover all associates' telehealth copay. This was made for twofold. One, we wanted our associates to stay healthy. We wanted to make sure that they could be seen by the telehealth physicians for anything, COVID-19 related or not. But we also wanted to help them do that in the safety of their own home or even in our community instead of actually having to go out to the clinic. And we even invested in Heritage United scarves and donated those out to all associates for their personal use, for them to use in their personal life with their families. Heritage United started as a mission to keep our residents and associates safe. But throughout these last several months, it's really turned to a call to action for everyone to do their part to help keep our residents, our people, our associates, to keep them safe, but to also keep vibrancy and camaraderie and joy into all of our everydays. One of the interesting things about creativity, and I can tell you this from firsthand experience, the more you use it, the more you have it. It just multiplies. It just becomes the way of life. And so thus, I'm excited to watch that Heritage United will continue to grow. We are currently in discussions of what else we can add to the program and what else we can push out over the next few months under this umbrella. Like each of you, the threat of COVID-19 suspended us in all operations, in every aspect of what we did. It made us look at everything, every function, every process, and reassess how to operate. In the early days of this pandemic, to help us foster creativity, strategy, collaboration, we actually formed a COVID-19 war room. Virtual meetings, executing COVID-19 outbreak drills, obtaining the latest data on positive cases in the counties and cities where we operate, and keeping up to date on the constantly changing latest guidance from our governing bodies became our new norm in this room. In the early days, it was kind of the rush of crisis management that kept us all motivated. But as those days turned into weeks, it really became an area designated for constant brainstorming, and it gave us the environment to maintain the rapid response and quick execution our buildings were needing from us. The war room really became the stomping grounds for discussions after discussions on how to rethink everything that we did, everything that we knew to be in senior living. From creating an opening committee, from writing phasing plans and supporting our teams in the communities, the war room became a place of new ideas and at times, conflict. Yes, there were wars in the war room.
That's a
full
fun one.
disclosure.
I like it.
Full disclosure, this picture was taken several years ago before social distancing was a thing or would have sounded like a punishment my parents would have given me as a teenager. This conflict, right? We all know healthy conflict is positive and can help us. And healthy conflict sprinkled with a culture of vision and ingenuity really aided us, I felt, especially through the do's and the don'ts and the can'ts that I felt we were constantly told. Recently I had some leadership meetings, some strategic planning meetings with several leadership teams, and I asked them two questions as we kicked off the meeting. First question, tell me something that actually went better than you anticipated as we were working through the challenges of COVID-19. Something, if it was a new operational task or something that you just thought would be very difficult, that would be better. Mine personally, I'll share, mine was our overwhelmingly family support and positive feedback when the time came that we did have COVID in a community. I was completely overwhelmed and so grateful for that support from everyone from our family side, commenting on everyone from the leadership teams in the buildings to our associates in the trenches providing direct care for residents that were actually sick. But my second question was, tell me something that was harder than you anticipated, something that was more challenging through COVID-19 than you thought it would be. And for me, it absolutely was being surrounded by our governing bodies, our associations that are in place to help us provide great care, feeling that you were getting a constant feedback of, don't do this, don't go there, you can't do this, I can't do this anymore, restrictions and barriers. And when you work in an environment of how can we do something, that really was a difficult part for me. And I felt truly that that war room mentality, right? That talking about those things in a very open-minded way of what infection prevention looks like and what fostering strong resident quality of life and family and resident relationships and how each piece was equally as important. It gave us, I felt, a good environment to work through those barriers together and stay united. Definitely having our moments of healthy conflict as well. So in any organization where creativity is role modeled and input is welcome, it was really inspiring to see how honestly the best ideas did not come from Lacey or I. It came from the buildings. And that's really often where the best solutions come. In fact, sometimes the solutions can come just as quick as the challenges were coming. For example, the move-in process, riddled with challenges, right? Between restrictions of tours, quarantining, social distancing, the barriers were real to a very essential part of our business. So a positive brainstorm session led to the idea of your 14 first days. Essentially, how could we make this 14 first days, their quarantine period, right, in the early days of COVID, how could we make this wonderful, exciting, even something that had some surprises? How could we do this in a pandemic? Well, ideas came flooding in from the communities on what we could do for our residents' first 14 days. In a sense, how could we take lemons and make lemonade? Who knows better than the buildings and life enrichment? So several suggestions that we had the buildings send us that they began implementing were, on one of the residents' first days, they had a meal that was designed just for them. Their favorite meal was served to their apartment. Having a special bouquet of flowers delivered to the apartment. Decorating the outside of their apartment. Having the staff come together behind their masks in the hallway, serenade them with their favorite song. Having donuts and Starbucks served for breakfast. Having a Zoom meeting, a meet and greet with the leadership team, really getting to know them virtually. And my favorite was having the new residents, fellow neighbors, right, fellow residents, record their own video welcoming that new resident to the community. Not only were they able to really talk and share what it was like to live at the community pre-COVID, and now with the restrictions currently with COVID, it was just the epitome of what we do is build relationships. And we were still able to figure out a way that one-on-one residents could connect with each other. The ideas really were endless with the 14 first days. And the whole creativity, not only did it create and make a much more inviting experience for the move-in process, frankly, it gave our associates and residents something fun to work on, something joyful. And like any good idea, it sparked more. Several meetings with our IT department after that initiated sending more and more tablets to the communities, understanding how they could use the tablets in different ways. So, as Lacey has in great detail explained earlier, we have a lot of ideas. We try a lot of things. We don't always get it right. And gosh, we've had our share of misses. Oh, you didn't even tell them about GOSH. We actually had a program with the acronym GOSH at one time that we almost rolled out. Gosh, that was almost a miss there, or it was a miss. So while I fully accept that COVID-19 will continue to challenge us and it will continue to throw new obstacles in our path, and I accept we won't always get the best solution the right time, right away. But without a doubt, I believe Heritage Communities has built an environment that empowers associates to be vulnerable, to speak up, to share their ideas, uniting us all in helping our residents live better. I wish you all the very best as you are working to do your best in the communities. Lacey and I have our contact information here. You're welcome to reach out to either of us on questions on how do you get an organization inspired and stay inspired, and or ideas that we had with COVID or any of our programs that we talked about here. I believe we'll be available here for questions and answers here live in a minute. But thank you for your time. We appreciate you all very much.